What is going on, everybody? Today I'm going to bring you something long overdue, the Garmin Fenix 3 HR long-term review. The Fenix 3 HR was released over a year ago, but it's still one of the best activity trackers and smartwatches on the market today. The Fenix 5 does have some very cool specific features, but the 3HR is so feature-packed that I think it's still going to work for almost everyone. Right now, the Fenix 3HR is at least $50 cheaper than any of the Fenix 5 series, plus you get some of the features they pulled out of the Fenix 5 series, such as Wi-Fi and Sapphire Glass. So over the last year, I've definitely put the 3HR through its paces. I've worn it every single day. I've used it for road running, trail runs, as well as on the treadmill. Used it for mountain biking and road biking, indoor cycling on the trainer and spin bike, a little bit of swimming, as well as rock climbing and a few other activities such as walking the dog. I'm not going to go into the design specs and features so much because that's already been done to death. Go see DC Rainmaker for a really great resource on that. But I am going to go into how it performed with specific activities, what I did like, what I didn't like, some bonus tips and tricks, as well as kind of my favorite apps and widgets. In terms of how it performed with specific activities, let's first start with running. So first of all, I thought it was going to be rather bulky when I was running because it is a rather large watch, but if you have the strap tight enough, it's not going to be a problem. For running on the road as well as trail runs, it tracked distance and GPS very well, and it was also very accurate on stride and cadence. For running on a treadmill, I was actually amazed at how well it tracks speed, distance, stride, and cadence, but it will be a little bit off, obviously. For mountain biking and road biking, it performed pretty well, but the heart rate can be a little bit off. I'll touch into that a little bit later. Compared to the Edge 520, the distance and speed were always pretty much spot on. However, as you'll see, the barometric altimeters had a good deal of variance and the total ascent figures were quite a bit off as well. If you have the autopause feature enabled for cycling, I would highly recommend using the Garmin speed sensor on your hub to constantly track speed because most GPS devices will have issues at slow speed, such as on switchbacks, and in areas with lots of overhead obstructions, such as trees or buildings. I'll have a follow-up video on how well the Fenix works for cyclists, so subscribe to my channel to get a notification when that comes out. For indoor cycling, it works really well when it's paired with the Garmin speed and cadence sensor. I actually have a separate video on how to set that up on a spin bike, so please check that out. In terms of swimming, I'm not a huge swimmer, so I'm not really qualified to comment confidently on that, but what I will say is read the instructions because it's not as intuitive as you think, such as a lap doesn't really mean a lap. It doesn't track heart rate in the water, so you will have to get the swim or try heart rate monitor strapped to get that metric. For activities outside of the primary three functions, it's going to have some interesting results. So for instance, rock climbing, it's not going to register the elevation that you're going to be gaining, so you're not going to be getting credit for those floors climbed. It worked well for indoor rowing, tracking strokes accurately, and it also worked well for stand-up paddleboarding, measuring distance, stroke, and stroke length. And finally, with weight training and HIIT style activities, the heart rate was always about 5 to 10% lower than my heart rate strap, and that is most likely due to wrist flexion. So now let's go into what I liked about the device. First of all, it is durable and worry-proof. It's actually the primary reason I bought it. I originally bought a Vivo Active HR, and after a very minor spill on my mountain bike, the screen cracked and made it unusable. So I basically was looking for a device that had a sapphire glass as well as no touchscreen. Initially, I babied it like any other piece of quality tech, but after time, I've actually become pretty much careless with it. So I'll knock it into walls, doors, crash on my mountain bike, and I don't ever have to worry about it. And by the way, I do not use a screen protector, and the glass is still perfect after a year later. The silicone watch band has also been very durable. I've spent a lot of time in the sun and exposed it to a lot of UV, and it has not dried out or cracked at all. I've heard of some other complaints, but for me, it's worked out well. In terms of temperature variations, I used it on some near 0 degree snow bike rides, as well as worn it in the sauna and steam room where it exceeds 170 degrees and haven't had any issues. For battery life, I've maybe only lost 5 to 10% of overall capacity over the last year, but I'm still able to get a solid 7 to 8 hours in GPS mode. I can't comment on just standby usage because I do use my watch every single day in GPS mode, but what I can tell you is that I only have to charge my watch about every 3 to 4 days, and I use my watch in GPS mode 2 to 3 hours each day. This may be a negative factor for a lot of people, but I really like that this is a non-touchscreen device and only uses physical buttons. If you're a serious athlete, you're going to want a device that is going to be really durable that you can use without even looking at it. And if you have sweaty hands or gloves, a touchscreen device is nearly unusable. Another great thing about the Fenix series is that it doesn't look like a fitness tracker. It looks like an expensive watch. And it's rugged, it's masculine, because some people need all the help they can get. When's the last time you saw a bodybuilder with a VivoFit on? And it's also going to be ridiculously customizable in terms of what you can do with the preloaded apps, widgets, and watch faces. And the third-party apps on the Connect IQ store fill in some of the gaps that are missing. So now let's go into what I didn't like. I actually had a lot longer list, but they fixed a lot of the issues and complaints that I had with firmware updates. I did a lot of testing comparing the 3HR's wrist-based heart rate monitor along with my heart rate strap paired with my 910 XT. So the biggest issue is that wrist movement will affect heart rate a lot. I've gone on just leisurely jogs where the 3HR is registering 150 to 160 beats per minute and my chest strap is registering a more expected 130 to 140 beats per minute. With cycling, you're going to have some inconsistent results as well. For mountain biking, that actually registered the most accurate heart rate. For road biking, it degraded slightly, and then with indoor biking, it was the worst. It always registered a lower heart rate than what my chest strap did. My theory goes back to the wrist movement, where with mountain biking, you're having a little bit more jarring movement, so you're registering a little bit higher heart rate. With road biking, there is going to be some movement, and then with indoor cycling, there's no movement at all. And as a side note, if you're on a really jarring mountain bike ride, it'll actually register some wrist movement, so you'll get some bonus steps for the day. And then some days the heart rate was just completely off, where it wouldn't register anything over 110 to 120 beats per minute. I'm not sure if it had the case of the Mondays or something, but it thought I was dead. For instance, last year I did a 100-mile gravel bike race, and for half of it, it only registered around 110 beats per minute, and I was definitely hitting it hard. And at the end of the race, it said I only burned 1,900 calories. I doubt it. And my last complaint with heart rate is that sometimes when you start an activity, it can take 30 seconds up to 3 minutes to even display the heart rate on the watch. It's kind of an odd bug. So overall, the heart rate will be inconsistent, but I think a lot of it has to do with that. It is a wrist-based heart rate monitor and not a chest strap. And then the last two complaints I had were actually addressed with the new 5 series. So first of all, it is a rather large watch. So if you have a small wrist, it can be a little bit awkward. And then the charging clip that came with the 3 series is really awkward to use. I really like the new charging cable system that they have with the new 5 series. So I've learned a few tricks to using the 3HR over the last year. First of all, if you're within an activity and you want to get back to the watch face or widgets, all you have to do is hold down the down key for a couple seconds. And then the second tip is related to my earlier gripe with the heart rate not displaying on the device when you select an activity. All you have to do is just select the activity a couple minutes before you actually want to start it and you won't have any issues. And finally, I want to show you how I have my 3HR set up as well as my favorite apps and widgets. I'm currently using the SC7 watch face, but my second favorite would be the Optimus HR. Both show tons of information and I often switch between the two. The third-party SC7 watch face will show you the battery percentage, total mileage across all activities for the day, your current calorie burn with an icon, current steps taken, current heart rate, whether you have any alarms, the time of sunset, unread notifications, and your current altitude. It also shows the date along with a graph of your weekly steps, which is displayed nicely with different colors for whether or not you completed your steps goal for the day. You can customize the colors quite a bit for this watch face, and I probably chose the worst color scheme ever. The My Day widget provides a great summary, but I'd like to see all of the data within one screen so you don't have to scroll. The next widget I have is calories. This widget for some reason doesn't have an additional drill down screen to show the past 7 days. It's odd because nearly every other widget has that ability. Next up is the activity widget where you can access your activity history. If you have a rather lengthy activity, it will take a couple seconds to load the activity data. And then from here, you can access the activity details with different data for different types of activities. It would be great if the My Day widget displayed as many fields as this does. The next widget I have is actually my favorite from Connect IQ. It's called Nappy Tracker. It gives you a nicely laid out summary and graph of the week for total, best, average, and current for steps, distance, and calories, as well as the goal percentage for the steps. If you hit the start button, it will display a nice graph of the last 7 days and you can cycle through each day and you'll eventually get back to the main widget screen. Next, I have the steps widget. It also displays your total distance across all activities on this screen. Unlike the calories widget, this one does display the data from the last week. It also displays the floors climbed and descended. I have the ABC widget to display altitude, barometric pressure, and the compass all in one just to save a couple screens, but I also have the elevation graph as well. Temperature is an okay widget, but don't count on it for anything accurate because you're combining body temperature along with ambient temperature. Weather seems to be fairly accurate, but I have no idea where they get their data. I probably didn't do enough Googling, so please let me know in the comments if you do know. Notifications are just that, notifications. Next up, I have the emergency info widget that I've cleared for this demo, but I think it's nice to have that added bit of info if for some reason I'm not wearing my road ID. Unfortunately, most people will not know how to navigate to this widget. Minutecast is a great app, especially when you're out adventuring, because it pulls data straight from AccuWeather, which is arguably very accurate, at least in northern Colorado. It does take a little while to load the data, and clicking the start button will bring up an extended outlook and the legend. Then I have the intensity minutes widget. Take this metric with a grain of salt, but it will give you a rough estimate of your weekly exertion level. You'll see your goal, which is set at 150 minutes by default, but if you're using this device for serious physical activity, that number seems very low. So I set mine to 300, which is usually what I'll hit within a day or two. Clicking the start button will dive in day by day. Lastly, I have the standard heart rate widget showing heart rate over the last 4 hours as well as the last 7 days with an average heart rate. And that's how I have mine set up. So that's it. The 5 series is out and it is awesome. But unless you need some very specific features such as mapping, Strava Live segments, or even a smaller watch, I would save your money and get the 3HR. It's going to be easily cheaper than any of the 5 series models at this point, plus it's going to come with Wi-Fi and Sapphire. In addition, they've worked out all of the bugs with the firmware, so you're going to get really consistent results. Thanks so much for watching this rather lengthy video. Please give that like button a tap and subscribe to my channel for the Fenix 5 review coming soon.